Yes, car video. Um, this is going to be a real quick video because I am watching this before I have to go into work. That's why I have no promos, no nothing. This is just my raw reactions out of theater. Um, so I went to see the brand new Alex Garland movie, Civil War, starring Kirsten Dunst. Nick Offerman plays the president. The rest of the actors, I really don't know the names. Like I said, this is just an out of theater reaction. Don't have time to look everyone up, so I'll be referring to them as the names in the movie. So the main characters here is Kristen Dunst plays a war journalist named Lee. You have a kind of young and up and comer who she finds along her travels named Jesse. There is the dude who drives and is kind of the wingman of Lee named Joel, and this older guy who joins him named Sammy, who is the old wise journalist. So what is this movie Civil War about? Now, before we get going into this review, I want to say there was a controversy around this movie. People thought it was going to be ultra political. It is an Alex Garland movie. Alex Garland, if you don't know who he is as a director, he did Annihilation, he did Ex Machina, and he did the highly controversial movie Men, which I have been pretty much, I'd say 50-50 on his movies. I really like Ex Machina. I think Annihilation is all right. I'm mixed towards Men. So how does he do in this latest movie, this latest effort? I'd say this movie is a weird watch for me. So, first off, as far as the politics goes, this is not a very political movie, despite what the premise would have you think. This movie takes a very cold, detached look at its subject matter. So, what is the subject? Basically, as the title states, there is a civil war between the states of California, oddly, and Texas. And then there's a Florida alliance, and then there is the DC and the president. And the premise is these forces are all meeting at DC, and the president is trying to reunite the country. And that's the general premise. Like I said, this is a general review. I'm not going to spoil any of the movie in case you want to see this. This is just general thoughts. So what do I think of the movie? Well, this is an interesting one because the characters are good, but yet hard to get invested in. And what I mean by that is Kirsten Dunst is a fucking amazing actress. I'm really glad to see her doing these different, very artistic roles. And everybody else is pretty good in the movie. I wish I knew who the younger actress, who's kind of supposed to be like the next generation, I'm just going to call her Jessie, but the person who plays Jessie in this movie, she is also very good. And her and Kirsten Dunst, I feel, or Lee, have the strongest connection in this movie. Joel's pretty good, but he's mainly the comic relief when things get too heavy. Now, where I say this isn't political is the message and the themes behind this are through this perspective of war journalists. So first off, if you're not really stoked about journalism or you don't really like war journalism, this is probably not the movie for you. It's very much from the perspective of these war journalists going across the country to try to get to DC to get an interview with the president. That's the whole premise. That's not a spoiler. That's pretty much set up. That's the premise of the movie. And it's the shit they see along the way. And for me, I am glad this movie doesn't take a political stance, but at the same time, it's kind of weird because the movie shows the different facets of what's going on without taking a stance, which makes the movie feel very detached from the audience. And I don't know if you guys catch my meaning, but what I mean by that is, I think by design, it is more of showing us what could be a possibility if there was an actual civil war without really stating what the causes were, what the reasons. There's like loose things alluded to. You really have to pay close attention to the movie. But they do allude to what caused this conflict, but it neither really solidifies any of the opposition's views. So you're not getting a deep dive into the motivations behind each side. So it makes it hard as an audience member to really connect to either side of this disagreement, or to really feel the impact when one particular side or the other wins these certain victories. It's just like if you were a journalist, it's cold and detached. And I think that is clever in a sense, very clever. But I also think it's going to make it hard for a lot of people to really connect with this movie. And I think that is the point of this movie. It's not out to say that all these leftist views made the world fall, or all these rights made the world fall. It's more of, these are the sides, this is what happened. Now you as an audience member choose who you feel is right or wrong. And the other good thing it does is each side, we get a little look into cold and calculated shit that they do to each other, to where it's not framing anyone right or wrong. You are literally following these journalists from their POV, where they take, throughout the whole entire movie, pretty much a neutral stance. Now, that doesn't mean they don't emote. That doesn't mean there isn't emotional moments. It means that when you are following them, you are taking the perspective of a cold, calculated war journalist who has neither, he or she doesn't have an investment in either side, which is a really interesting perspective for me to take. And I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't know how other people feel about this movie, but I'm going to say this is probably one of my favorite Alex Garland movies, in the sense of how he very boldly chooses to shoot this without putting those perspectives into the movie, without saying what he personally thinks. This is very much a you decide how you feel about this, and you taking a non-biased journalist stance. You are the one who is being brought this information essentially from them. So you're being reported to, and you're making up your mind over who's good, who's bad, what political views this has, or what it doesn't. And to me, honestly, this doesn't really have any politics to it. It's just the what if scenario and how ugly and vicious shit could get. There's a couple of scenes that really highlight this, and if you guys want me to do a more in-depth review, let me know in the comments, or you want me to share some spoilers where I think there is like some in-depth things to highlight my point, that it's just showing you the realities of what would happen if there was a civil war in our country. What would that look like? You even have the people who are down the middle, where there's all this shit going down as they're rolling through these different states and trying to get to their objective. And yet you have a particular place where there is, oh, hey, Kristen, she said, you have a great day further, and good night. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate that. So there's like these views where you see people living a normal life, and you know, no spoilers, but this is a very small thing. They asked this lady, like, hey, how have you guys stayed out of this? Like, what side are you on? And she goes, ma'am, I just turn on the television and stay out of it. And that, to me, was one of the probably the most impactful scenes in this whole entire movie, because of the sense that it very harkens to actual real life, where some people just don't get involved in either sense of the word. They really don't care about this whole big thing. Like, literally, the country is divided in half, and you have this one section that's living in like the fucking Twilight Zone, where they are just living like everything is normal. And now, like I said, there's no spoilers, but there's something revealed where you're like, oh, that's why these people are living comfortably. There's interesting things, and it's a movie that Alex Garland likes to make, where this isn't a movie, and I really have to watch this again, this isn't a movie where you just watch it once and you pick out every little detail. You really, this movie begs you to watch it a couple of times, because as I was watching this, there's small little hints that is giving you pieces of what's going on, kind of where everybody stands. There's that infamous scene that was in the trailer with those guys who said, what kind of American are you? I think the promoting for that was pretty fucking hilarious, because when you see the the whole scene in its entirety, that moment is probably the craziest moment as far as the intensity. This movie is quite intense. I will say there was a bit of a lull about maybe the beginning of the second act. It's nothing to fall asleep or anything, just kind of a slow down. But from like the end of the second to the third act, there's a very tense feeling as you're getting towards what their objective is. And the final shots are very haunting, especially how Alex Garland chooses to leave this movie at, which, when I'm really sitting here processing it, is quite perfect for what this movie is going for. I don't understand people's ratings. Maybe I do understand the thing that if you're not with photojournalism, or if you're not with, and I don't mean journalists like, Kotaku and all that other shit, or, any publication. I'm talking about people on the front lines who are going in the middle of these wars and shooting these photos. They have no stance. They're just bringing you what's happening. They're bringing their publishers the gruesomeness and the ugliness of it. And as someone who was interested in being that kind of photographer at one point in my life, I found it very fascinating. I thought it was a very unique way to approach a subject that could be highly divisive. I honestly don't think this movie is divisive whatsoever because of the perspective that it chooses to take. Because the movie chooses to let you decide who's bad and who's good. I think not giving you an answer and not taking a stance is the movie's strongest point. And oddly, at the same time, it's the movie's weakest point. Because without taking a stance, it's really hard to feel anything when people are dying. But once again, and I've heard interviews with Alex Garland and things, that's the point of the movie. It's not trying to force feed you an answer. It's not trying to say this is how you should feel. I feel like there's a lot of people who have different political views who will kind of stamp them on this movie because that's what they take from it. And in a sense, Alex Garland does achieve what he's trying to do in this movie, because I've already seen it in the reviews of this film. So my negatives for this is that, like I said, because there's such a detached view, it's hard for you to get invested in any of these characters because it's such a cold view of looking at what's going on, that even some big impactful moments, it's really hard to kind of feel, I think, what he wants you to feel at the time, because the whole POV is so cold. And the only way I could describe it is you have to see the movie, because even the violence just feels it's so realistic and so raw. And then the way they choose to frame it, it kind of makes you feel like a journalist just there taking pictures and not interacting, treating it like a gruesome scene, as opposed to what the implication of that violence is. And so, all in all, what do I think of this movie? I think this movie is pretty good. I think I'd watch it again, so there's the rewatchability. And honestly, for me, this movie is thought-provoking, and I like these kinds of think pieces. I like the fact that I'm going to be thinking about this movie later, and I may even do a spoiler review to give you some different views and things like that. But for right now, non-spoiler, I think I'm going to rate this an 8. I really enjoyed the fact that I could watch a movie that has the sense of a political kind of theme without beating you over the head with any kind of message. It's just more like, here's the situation, here's the characters, this is the objective, and you go along on this really warped and twisted road trip into what America could be like if we were to face like a modern day kind of civil war. And I found it a very kind of relevant, scary sort of premise because of the state of politics and the way the world is. It kind of makes you go like, this may not be as far off as people think that it is, especially if you talk any politics with anyone these days. And I appreciate that the director doesn't throw his own 2 cents in. Like, I'm fairly sure I know this man's politics based on the movie Men. But then again, that really makes me reevaluate Men because of the fact that he could do this movie without a clear bias or any kind of opinion. Just like, hey, this is what could happen. This is the direction we could go. Here's how things could unfold. So if you're into that kind of thing, I say go and see this movie. I give this movie a 8 out of 10. I rate it higher because of the fact that I thought about it a lot. I like it. I'll probably rewatch it to see if I can get more little bits of information. And there's probably a couple of things that I missed here. And yeah, definitely go and check this out if you want to see a movie that'll make you think. It is ultra violent. Yeah, give this a try. It was a bad watch. 8 out of 10. Thank you very much. If you like this video, share this video around. Hey, Lemon Pie, just my quick thoughts on Civil War. Watch the rest of the movie. Now I've got to go to the Phantom Bar and do some security. But if you like my video, click the like button, share this around, tell people, and as always, remember, there is only one rule here in the Phantom Zone. Kneel before General Zod.